Hey everyone, I'm Ian de Borja, and welcome to IMDb's first episode of Movies That Changed My Life, a podcast where your favorite stars break down the films that made them who they are today. This week's guest, our first guest ever actually, is actor Jeffrey Wright. You may know him as Bernard from HBO's Westworld, and you may be looking forward to seeing him as Jim Gordon alongside Robert Pattinson in The Batman. Really quickly about The Batman, you obviously can't say much about it at all, but what was it like when you got to book Jim Gordon?
I had been a huge Batman fan as a kid, but it was Adam West version. That
Right.
was the intro for me. But I was a nut for that. When that came out in the late '60s, I was first grade, second grade in 1970, 72. So after school in D.C. on what was it? WDCA, Channel 20, Adam West Batman, every afternoon, bro. Every afternoon. Preceded by Ultraman. Ultraman and Batman.
Ultraman,
1-2
yeah.
punch, baby. Oh, dude, I was there at the altar.
That big silver and red suit.
Oh, man. Oh, come on. So, and Matt, actually, we talked about that when we were kids. Matt's around the same age I am. We didn't see those early, that early series as being camp,
Right.
That was serious business, man. That was Batman and, high tech, serious stuff. But no, I was a massive fan of that show. And that show really kind of owed itself, in terms of the pastels and
Right.
the tone of it, to the original DC Comics in 1939, those types of tones, So that's, not where we're necessarily grounded with this one, but yeah, I'm really stoked to be a part of it, and also to kind of look back and look at the history of this and see the way that it's evolved and see, explore why it's lasted, these stories for 80 years and 90 years, right? 49, 67, 80 years. And it's been a fun exploration. Yeah. So Matt, we went and we met, and then, called back and said, hey, want you to do this. Would you be Gordon? And I'm like, yeah, man, let's go. And so when we started filming, really some pre-shooting, early scenes like January 4th or 5th. And then we got going in earnest about 2 weeks later, and we were cranking, man. We were just getting after it. And I was really liking what we were doing. We saw Matt kind of post up a few little gems
teases on
there.
Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah, just blowing the thing. Boom. We'd be on set, right? And I'm like, oh, wow, man. I mean, literally, we're in the middle of filming. Boom, and then it's like, there's Robert, and killing it in the suit, and then the Batmobiles. The Batmobile. I was like, those shots. I was like, yeah, because when I read the script, the Batmobile was described in a very specific way, and I said, man, that is right on the money. The Batmobile, okay, where does that come from? What is it? And I love the idea, as you saw, that it's grounded in a real kind of American truth,
Yep.
A hardcore, hyper-hemified muscle car, hyped up to the max that, he built, he spent a shitload of money on, and he put out there on the street, and it's not gonna be messed with, baby. But it's something. Okay, I get that. I know where that is, and it grounds us. It's still kind of hyper realistic, but at the same time, it's Gotham, because the thing about Batman is that he doesn't have superpowers, so but he is grounded in in a city that kind of looks a lot like the city that I live in, or Chicago, or we know that this is Gotham. Gotham, we know, is in America. So how do we play with that and root it in things that we can touch, but at the same time give it all of the the beauty and the scale and the melancholy and the sense of adventure and wonder that you want from these films.
Well, I know people will patiently wait for the Batman, which got pushed to a 2021 release date, but at least it's something for fans to look forward to when all this craziness ends. But now let's go ahead and jump into your first pick for movies that changed your life, which is 1986's Sid and Nancy, which tells the story of Sid Vicious, bassist of the band The Sex Pistols, and his girlfriend, Nancy Spungen. The movie was directed by Alex Cox and stars the great Gary Oldman and Chloe Webb. It has a 7.0 and 28,000 ratings on IMDb. So set the scene for us. When was the first time you watched Sid and Nancy?
I'm trying to remember, actually, because I haven't seen it in a while. I hadn't seen it in a while until last night. I rewatched it, because when I'm faced with this question, a movie that changed my life, I was like, that's kind of a tough one, changed my life. And then, I thought about it in some very specific ways in which it has influenced my life and my work as an actor, particularly. And I was trying to figure out where I saw it, and I believe it was with some friends of mine, some movie buff friends of mine, roommates of mine from college. Hello, Randy. And I believe Hat was there, but hello, you guys. And I think we were in Boston, I believe, for whatever reason, and we went to see this movie. And I had started acting in 1986, late 86. I was, in college, but I was I was a political science major. I wasn't really, kind of doing much. I had always been in love with the theater, and since the time I was a kid, going to plays with my mom, and I'd always kind of thought about it, but I never really did anything about it until 1986. I was a junior in college, and it kind of just bit into me, and and here we are. So saw this film, and it's funny because I hadn't seen it, but I'm watching the film last night, and it's so vivid to me. Moments were so vivid, and I was like, okay, here come, and I think I've probably only seen it twice. The first time, maybe 3 times, maybe there was another time, but the reason that it hit me was because I was just starting acting, and I saw this guy Gary Oldman, and I was like, holy, whoa, man. What's that dude doing? Chloe Webb as well was
fantastic.
Just, like over the top, like just brilliant. And Gary just like, man, I looked at that. I was like, oh, dude, this dude is getting after it.
Can't find it. My action man.
You mean G.I. Joe?
I didn't even have 5 minutes ago. I've had it since I was a kid. It's very valuable. I want to kill.
Wait! Flying in! Telling some olives!
And as far as actors go, there have been many actors who have influenced me, of course, but Gary's influence on me was in very specific ways. And so, to follow him doing, having done Gordon, do it now, for follow him and for me to do it now is really cool. But early on, that movie hit me in a way that, as I think back, really, changed some things for me.
Yeah, Gary Oldman, I mean, in my notes when I watched it the other day too, I mean, you just get lost in every character Gary Oldman plays. Yeah. Like, he's a completely transformative actor in every role he does, and he is so good in this. And again, Chloe Webb is equally as fantastic as Nancy, and obviously Gary, he has this huge career and he gets so much praise for his role as Sid Vicious, but I really think Chloe is just on par with him there too throughout this whole thing. It's
no question.
Wild. Were you into the punk scene at all growing up? Did you like punk music and were you into that, or is that a part of the reason why this movie struck with you as well?
No, I wouldn't say I was like a full-on punk. I mean, I listen to every type of music, That's not what drew me so much to it. But of course it did in the sense that edge, we were all, kids that age, you're, for the most part drawn to that type of edge. So yeah, that had something to do with it too. Also, it's London, but it's also New York, it's like, it's kind of, not specifically, but it was that village scene, New York, even though a lot of it takes place in the Chelsea Hotel. That was, that New York was kind of calling me a bit too. Spike Lee's movie was around that time. She's Gotta Have It. That was another one that was kind of like, New York calling. There was another, movie, if I think back to like Midnight Cowboy, It was another kind of, underside of New York, these kind of scenes that I was getting. And then boom, it was, Sid and Nancy was another kind of strange invitation to to New York. And when I first moved here, I ended up living, I lived on 10th and D on the Lower East Side. That was my first place before I began school at NYU, grad school. That was 1988. So, about 10 years after the end of the Sid and Nancy story, but still that vibe, there's that bit of that vibe around. So, that was part of the appeal and part of why we chose to go see it. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, the whole movie felt like it felt like a fantasy, almost like a messed up fairy tale. Like there's so many instances where you're like, is this how it happened? This is how Sid saw it happen? Like there's a scene where the Sex Pistols are having a party on the boat, and then the cops come and arrest everyone, but Sid and Nancy just like walk off arm in arm, sort of laughing, like walking away. I mean, there's so many of these cool like fantasies there, and things like that struck me as like this really bizarre fairy tale of like star-crossed lovers in a sort of way.
Oh, totally. It so much is a fairy tale, and I'm not sure they're star-crossed. I mean, there's what's fascinating about the movie is in the midst of all of this, in the midst of all of their dysfunction, all of their pain, all of their confusion, chaos, there's like kind of like an undeniable real love there, And that scene, when they're, and it is as well fantastical, the cinematography by Roger Deakins, there are moments of just like kind of like stained glass, cathedral stained glass, like, light and wonder. But what you're looking at is the two of them in an alley with garbage like raining down, and they're kissing, and it's like the most beautiful moment. It's awful, and it is absolutely gorgeous. And all of a sudden, the screen that music comes under, and all of a sudden, the screen just breathes. Just like exhales, and it's like whoa. I mean, it's really so. Yeah, it is a fairy tale, and it is very much subjective, but at the same time, it's fitting too, because those brains were, they were seeing things. They were seeing things with the assistance of certain chemicals, and they were not seeing things too. But it is a kind of horrible, beautiful, lovely fairy tale.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you talk about Roger Deakins. I mean, the great Roger Deakins, legendary cinematographer. This is relatively very early in his career.
Yeah.
I read that he wanted to shoot it in black and white, but the studio said they didn't want to do that. It'd be too artsy. So instead, Deakins sort of, I guess, throughout the film, he started like pulling out less and less color from the shots. So there's less posters in color, there's less clothes in color, just to slowly get it like more dreary. And yeah, that shot you were talking about of them kissing in the alleyways. I mean, it's fantastic. It's amazing.
Yeah, I'm glad he didn't shoot in black and white. There's just those kind of muted colors serve it. They kind of everything's just a little bit drained of its blood, and because of that, the palette just has a softness to it. The tones just have they're intoxicating and intoxicated in a way that makes perfect sense. So I think he did it just right. I think the studio might have directed him in a reasonably constructive way, which is not entirely the case always. But Gary, just going back to why this movie, I think, is meaningful in ways related to him, is that in terms of performance, and also in some ways in terms of story, I think for me, I can draw a direct line from seeing this film to Basquiat, where I, interact or intercept for the first time, Gary, it's the first time we worked together. And, two stories that have obvious similarities in many ways, both stories of, artists on the outside of most circles, struggling to kind of be on the inside or not. And both, with an edge to them, obviously. Both died tragically young, but, a lot of it set in, lower Manhattan, too. So, there's a lot of parallels there. But in terms of, like, kind of performance, like, when I saw that movie, I think that was, for me, I guess what a lot of actors of kind of James Dean's generation saw when they saw him for the first time was like, I got permission, It's like, oh, wow, okay, I can go there, So Gary was like it was like kind of an invitation, a permission to be really personal and to be as, extreme and full emotionally as is necessary, as you want, as fits the character and the story. And that was a big deal, man, because I hadn't seen anybody do what he was doing. Right. Really, I hadn't seen. There's nobody playing those notes, man. There's nobody like going there. Come on, man. It's like, what? Oh, wow. Okay. So yeah, that was, it was several doors opening, and then as well, like, another movie that I did early on, shortly after Basquiat, was Shaft. Kind of different story, different genre, obviously, but that, the character that I played, goes to some places, and that again was like, Gary says, oh, yeah, okay, we're free to do this, we're free to really bring it. And so, yeah, man, he early on, in kind of ways unrelated to, a personal thing, had influenced me. And then when I met him and we got to work together, it was just boom,
Yeah.
We just hit it, and like every other actor in there who were, who all were folks that I admired. I mean, David Bowie, come on, massive influence on me. I mean, from early on, and then now as a young actor, a young artist, at the beginning of my thing, boom, here he is, like kind of welcoming. It's like, wow. But, his music forever had been, like a score in my, at times in my head. So, Chris Walken was there. These were other actors too, who like Gary, kind of, push the edge, Dennis Hopper. I mean, Dennis, who
we'll talk about Dennis Hopper in a little bit.
Catch up with in our next film. But Dennis, those were other artists, and I think we all recognize that, when we were there. Those were all artists who, like, there was, enjoyed a kinship between one another, and and here I was, and being welcome inside that. It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool, and I'll never forget the first scene we filmed on that movie was a scene in which Jean-Michel walks into a restaurant and he presents these postcards that he wants to sell to Warhol, to Bowie, and Bruno Bischofsberger, Dennis Hopper's there. And that was the first scene that we shot. Benicio, another great actor, obviously. Benicio and I are outside. Let's point. Hey, I'm going in there. Go in. Boom. So we shot the interior of that scene first. The first scene of that shoot. And So we go in, we rehearse it. I go back to my back to makeup or whatever to get the thing, and I'm sitting there, and Dennis walks in. He opens the door, walks in the trailer, and he leans into my ear, and he says, "Cool." And I was like, "Oh man, okay, let's roll." I was like, I didn't. That was all I needed to hear. Yeah. So my being there, there were many things that brought me there, but definitely that film, Sid and Nancy, and what Gary had done, allowed me to, in some ways, find a way to get there, to be able to, inhabit some of those spaces. Because he had shown me something about how to get there.
Awesome. So let's talk Westworld a little bit. I think the comments we'd receive for talking to you this podcast and not talking about Westworld would be brutal. So we got to talk about it. I've been a huge fan of Westworld since season 1. What do you think the cast and crew and Lisa Joy and Nolan they've learned from season 1 to season 2 to season 3?
What have we learned? We learn. I think we learn a lot. Jonah and Lisa have a fairly far-reaching narrative arc in their heads, so they're just moving the ball down the field toward that end. And obviously, the show this year is in some ways a departure from previous years, but in other ways it's not. The show has always been about kind of flipping the body inside out and showing the refractions and reflections and, projecting those into the mirror, whether it's on an individual case, whether it's in terms of timelines, whether it's in terms of kind of the ways narratives weave into one another and kind of become something else. And this year, in terms of the park that we inhabit, which is the park that looks very much like the park outside of our doors, and in these days feels even more like that. So the show has been kind of reborn in some ways, but continuing on the same path in other ways. But that path, of course, is like has many trails that shoot off of it. So it's more Westworld. I guess it's a little more, slightly more, in some ways, perhaps linear than it has been in the past. But maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You never know.
That's right.
But it's been fun. It's been a fun ride. Fun 3 years. We just got picked up to do it again. So
yeah, for season 4.
Yeah. We love the show. We love working with one another. And so we get after it again.
So much fun of watching Westworld is the infinite amount of fan theories, the Reddit comments, the Twitter threads, all that sorts of stuff. Do you participate in those? Do you ever kind of read just to see what's going on there? Or do you like keeping that part a little bit separate from your everyday life?
No, I did. I totally did. Particularly the first season, because it was great for me. It was almost as though fans were co-writers in the writers' room, because they were going off on their own narrative journeys, and in some ways I really say, okay, that's as valid as anything else. Some were maybe less valid than others, but it's as like kind of a creative tangent to the show is certainly meaningful, valuable, and it was cool. I was digging it, and I wanted to find out, how far ahead we were, or were we lagging behind the audience's brain, and so. I check it out. Less so now. I'm a little. I don't know. I've been busy, so I haven't had a chance lately to see where folks are. But yeah, I think it's super cool, man.
Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the first episode of Movies That Changed My Life. If you are, please hit that subscribe button to make sure you get all of our upcoming episodes as soon as they're available. And if you would be so kind, please leave a review and let us know what you think of the show so far. We have some great guests lined up for future episodes, including Joel McHale from Community, The Tiger King and I, and the CW Stargirl, Archer, Arrested Development, and Valley Girl's Judy Greer, and dear friend of IMDb, Silent Bob himself, Kevin Smith. Last, you can also check out imdb.com/podcast for more content. All right, let's get back to Movies That Changed My Life with Jeffrey Wright. All right, next movie, Apocalypse Now, 1979, directed by the legendary Francis Ford Coppola, starring Martin Sheen, Marlon Brando, Robert Duvall, Harrison Ford, Dennis Hopper, Lawrence Fishburne, among many others, about a U.S. Army officer.
Couple actors.
Yeah, just a few small names. You might have heard of them. U.S. Army officer serving Vietnam was tasked with assassinating a renegade Special Forces colonel who sees himself as a god. Set the scene for this one.
Oh, man. When I first saw Apocalypse Now, it was after it had come out in the theaters. And there were, a couple of friends of mine in high school who were like, huge on war movies, and one of them actually ended up in the military. He was an officer in a tank unit, in an armored unit in the first Gulf War. Bill Delaney, hello Bill, and he and another friend of mine who I went to high school with and also to college with, a guy named Steve Phillips, loved this movie. And I think it was, I don't know, maybe 80. It was a couple of years after it came out, It was such an immersive experience. Like, it was, you turn that movie on and, I'm sure we all have movies like this, and it just transported me. I was inside that place, and the room got warm and, humid, and, it almost, it just has an odor to it at times, even, whether it be like, of a mango tree or of something, something grimmer, and
the fresh smell of napalm.
Yeah, in the morning, as is said, and it just took me on this journey, immersive journey, and the kind of literary quality of it, was just so powerful. Obviously, it's based on Heart of Darkness, Joseph Conrad's novel, which is actually set in the Congo. The film was, filled with this kind of literary quality to it, and the imagery that is created by that because of the narration and the language, let alone the imagery and the performances. But it was just full with all of this stuff. It's a film that I can't see the likes of which ever being made again.
Yeah.
I mean, what was 2 years? However long it took them to make that film out in the Philippines or wherever they were, calling in the Philippine Army, for the Philippine Air Force to fly over them. I mean, that shit ain't happening no more, man. That ain't, those days are gone, man. And you have, this just like at the very least temporarily mad genius at the center of it, Francis Ford Coppola, like kind of choreographing all of this stuff in a way that creates something that is dense and exciting and singular, and just like, for me, for, a kid, I don't know, 17, 18, whatever it was, like, whoa. I mean, it was hitting all the notes. It was hitting all the, all the stuff for me. And definitely in terms of, as I, started, becoming more interested in, in acting, I became even more immersed in it. I've probably seen that film, unlike Sid and Nancy, I've probably seen that film over 100 times. I don't remember the last time I've seen it, but it was like a period where it was just like my thing, it was like, okay, Saigon, and so, yeah, that's that was where it began and part of where it took me.
Part of the legend of this movie is all the things that it took to get this movie made. I mean, all these stories of shooting on the set. Something that I really love and come to is that when Marlon Brando showed up, he was, pretty overweight. And so that forced Francis Ford Coppola to only shoot his face and put him in shadows. But that is what makes Kurtz so freaking good.
Yeah, man.
Kurtz is this monster when you're introduced to him. The way he's rubbing water on his head and the lights are just showing. I mean, it's unbelievable. And the reason that happens,
eating pistachios or whatever.
yeah, the reason that happens is because he was a little bit overweight. Coppola didn't want to show him like that, and it's amazing. Is there a specific performance you really are drawn to when you think of this movie? I mean, I know it's so hard.
Nope. I mean, it's Sheen. It's it's Harrison Ford in that little moment with the officers. There's the dude who says who's sitting with the bangs, the sweaty bangs. Exterminate with extreme prejudice. I mean, there's you try this this shrimp.
Captain, I don't know how you feel about this shrimp, but if you'll eat it, you'll never have to prove your courage in any other way.
And I can assure you, you'll never have to prove your courage in any other way. I mean, it's just like every moment of this film is a masterpiece portrait in and of itself. But if there is one that I will single out, and I'll single out for a very specific reason, and that is Albert Hall, right? Who plays Chief. So, Chief, who might have been my mission, but it sure as hell was the Chief's boat,
Right.
And so Albert Hall and I crossed paths in the first film role that I ever did, which was a miniseries called Separate But Equal, in which I played the youngest of the lawyers who worked at the NCAA Legal Defense Fund in arguing the Brown versus Board of Education case at the Supreme Court. And Sidney Poitier played Thurgood Marshall. And Albert Hall, he was on this team. And I show up, I'm like, Sidney Poitier, oh man, yeah, Cleavon Little, yeah, but whoa, Albert Hall, Chief? And I'm like, oh man, oh bro. And so at one point, I think it was at the end of this, and I guess when I was down there for a couple of months down in South Carolina working on this film, my first ever single shot, was opposite Sidney Poitier. And I'm 22 years old. And I got the gig, or I got the audition at the time because I had a political science degree, So the casting director said, send this knucklehead here, And I'd been acting for 3 days, man.
Right.
I just started just out of school. I'm huh? I think my headshot might have been a passport photo or something. I was yeah. At the end of the thing, obviously spoke to Sidney about some things, but Albert came up to me and he said, Jeffrey, he handed me a book. And the book was the autobiography of a yogi. And he wrote inside the book, it said, Jeffrey, someday there'll be a young actor. He said, someday there'll be a young actor who comes up to you and says, I've seen your film 100 times. And it has meaning to me. And he said that will be an evolution. And that was what he'd written on the inside of the cover of the book. So yeah.
I mean, that's really amazing to hear. So if you're able to draw a through line between Sid and Nancy and Apocalypse Now, do you think there would be one?
So when I talk about these films, because of the impact that they had on me, but also because of the personal connections that were related to them in my career, particularly early on, that really shaped the things that I've been up to.
Thank you for helping kick off this podcast with two pretty incredible movie selections. If you haven't seen Sid and Nancy or Apocalypse Now, you should go check that out right away. But before we go, I did want to make sure that we had a chance to talk about Brooklyn for Life. and all the great work you're doing to support the frontline workers over in Brooklyn.
I put together an organization with some friends of mine here in Fort Greene, Brooklyn, called Brooklyn for Life. We're now providing 2,500 meals per day on average to local hospitals, 8 medical facilities in Brooklyn, one in Lower Manhattan that snuck in because everybody wants to be in Brooklyn, so we'll take them. And all 11 FDNY EMS stations here in Brooklyn. We're doing that through a rotation of 42 small biz restaurants here. So we started March 27th with 2 restaurants delivering 200 meals to Brooklyn Hospital, which, if I look out my window, is just across the way there. So we've been hustling on that since March 27th. Set up a GoFundMe page March 25th, set up a 501c3 shortly thereafter. So we've been receiving funds through the GoFundMe and also via direct donation to our 501c3. So that has kept me busy, kept me focused, kept the television off, kept my frustrations and, concerns and sense of helplessness to some extent in check. So it's been good. The restaurants are really engaged in this. They're feeling purposeful, and they're also doing something for their own employees and for, the lives of their businesses. So that's been great. We put out a video. We released that Friday morning. With a bunch of, Brooklynites, known and unknown. That was really about a celebration of Brooklyn, a celebration of our love for our community. These were certain Brooklynites who were either born here, lived here at some point, or live here now. And so it was a really great gathering of people who came together to spread the love, celebrating, our community and the cause. That we're all facing as a collective, and also it was a call to action to help us raise some further funds to keep this operation going. Specifically, I'm hoping we can get some corporate support. Right now, we've had none. We've raised about $450,000, 270, I believe, the last I checked on the GoFundMe page, and then some other larger donations directly to the 501c3. Daniel Craig stepped in very early. Spike Lee, Jay-Z has contributed. So it's been kind of gratifying that we've had these big dollar donations, and we've also had an equal amount $5 and $10 donations, small dollar donations of people in the community and outside the community who just wanted to help. So we've all come together to see if we can. If we can do something, that's helpful in the midst of all this. So, everyone has stepped up except some of our corporate neighbors. So, I hope they receive that call to action too. Brooklyn for Life. You can go to brooklynforlife.org. You can see the video there. You can also, if you want, if you feel it, if you have it, you can chip in. But watch the video, share it, feel the vibe. And you can also go to our GoFundMe page, which is GoFundMe Brooklyn for Life, and you'll find us. Since March 27th, we've grown into 2,500 meals per day to all of these various sites, and we have surpassed, I think, 55,000 meals in total since then. So it's
amazing.
It's been great to get some revenues flowing to these local small mom and pop joints. And show some support and love, and provide some sustenance to folks who are dealing with this thing on the front lines. Brooklyn for Life, baby.
Thank you so much. This has been great. I love talking about all this stuff with you. It's cool getting a very personal, I like your personal history spin of you love these movies, but it's also so much about how it affected your personal life and your acting career. It's fantastic. Where can people keep up with you again if you want to help out with Brooklyn for Life? See all the great work you're doing, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, you can go to brooklynforlife.org, and you can check out the story there. And if you feel it, if you have it, you can help us out, with whatever you can. Or you can go to our GoFundMe page, which is Brooklyn for Life GoFundMe. Just do a Google search of that. But either way, you'll see our story. But you can check out the video at brooklynforlife.org, and check it out. Trying to spread a little love with some folks that you know, some folks that you don't know, all repping Brooklyn for life.
Amazing. Well, Jeffrey, thank you so much. This was a ton of fun, and stay safe out there.
Cool.
Thank you again for all the great work you're doing for the front line. workers, and we'll talk to you soon.
You too, bro. All right. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
All right. Stay safe, y'all.